Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Don't Fear the Weight with me, your TinyTitan host, as always, Vicky Masita. I am with an extremely experienced and extremely exciting person in the hot seat for the guestings today by the name of Mr. Tom Hibbert. Hello, Tom. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Thank you very much. Guys and girls, if you do not know who Tom Hibbert is, then I suggest that you actually get onto the Instagrams and onto the socials and actually find out who he is, because by rights of a lot of strong people that I know and who are on my books as well, he is an absolute genius. So, which is very nice, isn't it? Very flattering,
No pressure.
isn't it? I know, no pressure then, Tom. You better be bloody experienced there. But for people who don't know who you are, do you just want to give us a little bit of a background about who you are, where you've come from, and what you are an expert in?
Sure. So obviously my name's Tom. My company is, we've got a little bit of a delay going on, I think still. My company is called Winning Strength. I have two companies, Winning Strength Southampton, which is my gym, and then we've got Winning Strength Online, which is kind of like an educational platform for strength athletes, coaches, personal trainers, whoever. I'm probably most well known in the strongman arena. I used to be an under 90 strongman, slightly heavier, under 105 strongman. I've managed to win England's strongest man 3 times at under 90. I'm quite proud of that. I came second in worlds once. I held the under 90 world record in the log clean and press before my good mate Rob beat it. And I'm the current British record holder in the log clean and press with 177 kilo lift. Wow. And then I've been a coach to a variety of people, most notably currently, I suppose, people like Graham Hicks, Chris Morgan, Andrew Flynn. These guys are all on the Giants Live and UK Strongest Man stage, and a load of other strongmen as well, which is quite cool.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very, very cool. So one of the biggest questions that I wanted to ask you from my own personal viewpoint, I suppose, why strongman? What was it that really just kind of tickled your boat about strongman? Because it's not the most easiest sport to just kind of fall into, is it?
Why strongman, I think, was the question, and I'm just moving in the gym just so we can find some better signal. Why strongman? I'll tell you what, I get asked this a lot. I stopped playing football. I was an avid footballer as a kid. I stopped playing football, but I still wanted a competitive element in my life. Anyone who's met me knows how ridiculously competitive I can be. So I still had I didn't have a competitive element. So I went and started training, opened my gym. I did a lot of modified strongman training through my learning with Charles Poliquin. And because I lacked that competitive element, I just kind of fell into strongman. One of my good mates, Aaron McGowan, was a strongman at that point. He kind of got going a year ahead of me. And he said, look, it's fun. You'll be good at it. Did training for a year, entered my first contest, and then the rest was history. And then also, I mean, ever since being a kid growing up, watching World's Strongest Man on TV at Christmas, you're always looking and thinking, I want to be that guy. And it was back when Mariusz Pudzianowski was like the leading strongman, and not only was he winning all the time, but he, aesthetically, he was very pleasing to look at. He was lean, muscular, so he wasn't just big lump. So you kind of were inspired by what he did massively. So yeah, that's probably the background why strongman.
It's funny, isn't it, when we look at people who were strongman back then and we look at the big, huge mountains of men. How do you find, in your perspective, how strongmen have actually evolved throughout the ages? Do you think that they have now purposely become leaner and more aesthetically pleasing, should you say, than the guys maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah, because it's become a little bit more professional. Maybe not so much leaner. I would still consider Puds's physique, along with what he was able to achieve, probably the best. Yeah. I wouldn't say leaner, but definitely more muscular overall. Definitely a much higher standard. I mean, if you look at it a different way, the world record in the log, 15, 20 years ago, before Z got hold of it, was 190 kilos. Yeah. That's pretty similar to the under 105 record now. but it's definitely evolved. It's way more competitive. There's huge weights being lifted compared. I actually, another thing, I remember being in one of the England's finals, and the stone run in England's under 90 final was the exact same weights as the stone run in 10 years in World's Strongest Man final 10 years earlier.
Wow.
So the weights have come on an incredible amount. These guys are lifting. I mean, you look at the stone that Tom Stoltman lifted. I know he's done 286 and he just missed out on 300, but the end of their stone run is usually has historically been around 180, 200, and now the weights they're lifting are just crazy compared to 20 years ago.
It's immensely crazy. I mean, it is all just about an evolving athlete, isn't it? So times evolve, and just like technology and science evolve, I do believe that athletes evolve in the same kind of capacity because of various other notions that people have. So either training regimes or nutrition, or of course exogenous assistance, because all of that does play a pivotal part in this kind of thing. But anyway, that's not the kind of like chit chat bit around. I want to know more about you, and a lot of the listeners have given me a load of questions on Instagram to know about you and just kind of like deep dive into your brain. Now, you are more well known for programming the log, and especially one of the newest programs that you have out now is Log and Press Like Hixie. So what is it about the log that is so technical, and how can you pick up, or how would you, let's start right at the very, very basics. If we talk through the basics of a log from your perspective, how do you get a newbie from a deadlift to deadlifting a log to progressing it from that side of things? Without giving your program away, obviously, because we don't want to do that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I teach beginners, like as in someone who's never lifted a weight, because I've had Olympians through my door, I've had world-class strongmen through my door, all the way to beginners. And there's more beginners than anything else. And I teach the log to beginners in 4 movement patterns.
Yep.
From the get-go. They don't really get an opportunity to say no. It's like the log is something you're doing. Okay?
Right, okay.
It's deadlift, then we teach the clean pattern, then we teach the strict, and then the push press. The lightest log we have is 25. So some people are a little bit behind, but they can always start with doing the deadlift. They can always do the clean, and then what we tend to do is set up another bar elsewhere so they can do the press with a lighter weight, so they can do it safely. But it's just about efficiency of movement patterns, and it's kind of like just throwing them into the deep end. I don't believe people need a huge background to be able to deadlift a log. I don't think that's a massive necessity. But obviously, I'm watching them, and they're doing it safely. They do not get to go to the next step, like the clean or the press, if they can't keep their back flat. Which you get some people who don't have that coordination, they don't have that strength, and we have to kind of take them away and do other things and bring them back. But it's very rare that someone can't perform a basic hip hinge pattern.
Okay, that's very, very cool. So when you progress the log, then, I mean, let's have a think about it, because if you're deadlifting and you're deadlifting with an overhand grip or a pronated grip, for all of these coaches out there who are saying, "Oh, Vic, you're not using the right terminology." Well, okay, fine. Overhand grip. You don't hold a log like that, do you? So it's that difference in terms of rotation. Is there anything that you see people do wrong when they just decide to kind of like pick up a log without being taught properly, because they are literally just going through a hip hinge?
Sure. So with the log, we have a neutral grip, and then the diameter of the log, depending on which diameter, we have 8-inch log, 10-inch log, 12-inch log. Then the displacement or way, center of gravity displacement is further away from you. So the biggest mistake I see people do is they don't have anything in contact with the log.
Yeah.
I.e. the log, much like a deadlift, it should be dragged up the body. And the log is always starting from a higher point. We have blocks, which are 18-inch blocks. So it's almost a partial deadlift anyway. Yeah. But the little tip, besides having it, touch the body, I literally have people right on it, is the angle of the handle should be like that.
Right.
So then you grab it like that. When you angle the handles down like that, it brings the log center of gravity closer towards you. Epic. From the starting point, and then it just kind of rolls up into your lap.
Right. Okay. You make it sound so easy. Just tilt it away from you, and then it just rolls up. If only it was that easy.
It's funny you mention all these small bits. I go into quite big detail. Even if you're like, look, I'm not interested in purchasing the program. If you go on the Press Like Kicks, you get 7 days worth of free trial. So you can look at all the technique videos and learn it, even if you don't then subscribe. So you've got access to all of that content. And we go through all of that, like different handles, the difference between a Slater log, a long handled log, and where, how that might affect your clean and press as well.
So guys, go and obviously have a check about that out, because it is really important if you are looking to get into a strongman, or even if you just want to play around with a log. It's really important to know about these little fundamentals, because it is not just like deadlifting. It is not just like cleaning. There is, some big things that you need to be aware of. Okay, so one of the questions then relating to the log, because I don't just want to talk about the log, obviously, because there's a lot more to you than, just knowing how to log press. One of the questions on the log was, how do you improve your log when you do not have a log at hand?
I think we skipped a little bit. Do you mind repeating the question? I didn't hear it.
Yeah, sure. So how do you improve a log press when you do not have access to a log?
Barbell. I mean, it comes down to what do they have access to. So if they have a barbell, we would just be using that. Ideally, a Swiss bar could be an option. It is very difficult, but if, let's say, we had a hierarchy, so the closest thing to a log would be a Swiss bar, which is a neutral grip bar.
Yeah.
And then if they don't have access to that, we would go, do you have access to a football bar, which is slightly angled? And you could definitely push press that. Cleaning it would be a lot more difficult. And then keep going back down the hierarchy. I would probably look at an axle or a 2-inch thick diameter bar. And then after that, literally just get used to cleaning and pressing a barbell.
So there you go. That's a very simple one, isn't it? It's not actually rocket science. Just pick up something else.
I think I might have lost you. Oh, you're there. You're back.
I'm here. The Wi-Fi is not that brilliant, I have to say, Tom. It's not fantastic, but
we keep going in and out.
Exactly. We keep going in and out, but we're just going to keep on trying, guys. So if it does tend to kind of like go off, we'll obviously just try and reconvene as best as we can, but we'll just keep on going as best as we can at this considerable point. Okay. So one more about the log. I'm not very good at not me personally, another question. I'm not very good at strict pressing. Is it worth me practicing a heavier weight from pins, or should I just go back down the weight again before pyramiding back up?
Here's an interesting statistic. The best strict presser I've ever seen with the log, bar Hicksy, if we look at pound for pound maximum weight lifted, is Zadrunas Savickas, who is the world record holder. Do you know how often he trained the strict press?
God, probably never.
Never.
Yeah,
that's exactly it. He did lots of reps from the chest, so that would involve obviously the concentric, but then the eccentric control back, which helped him develop his inhuman strength that he was able to develop, plus all the other assistance work. So what I've found over the years is the strict press isn't hugely necessary to be like, look, you need to work it. Okay, I think you can. There's a couple of reasons why. So one of the main reasons is if you look at the log, because of where the handles are and the way it sits, it's not directly on the chest. Okay, so what I tend to think of it as, because of the diameter of the log puts your hands here, I look at it as a partial lift.
Yeah.
So it's that you should lift off the floor up is because it's a partial lift, it's heavier, so it's more intense, it's harder to recover from. So what I find is people try and overdo the strict press, and it's too much for their nervous system, joints, ligaments, and tendons to recover from. So in essence, the answer for this client, until I see videos and go, look, this is what you should do, a lot of the time is you shouldn't be looking to train the strict press with the log too often. What was the? Can you just reread the question to see if I can also give him a few tips?
Yeah, sure. So let me just get it up so I've got everything properly here. I am really weak in my strict press. Is it worth me doing strict presses in a heavier weight from the pins, or should I reduce the weight and build my strength up?
The other thing with the strict press as an animal is you want to go lighter.
Right.
You want to bring the weight down. What I would tend to tell people is look to move the weight quicker. Look to try and achieve a speed of 0.8 meters a second. It's a really swift rep with no grind. So what I would say is he probably needs to train it lighter to then progress and move forward. Again, because it's a partial movement, you're looking at, more in the range of 4 to 6 reps or 4+. Anything lower than that, and it's so difficult to recover from week to week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the answer for him is probably go lighter, and I'd probably take it out completely for a block and be like, look, work 8 weeks on push press reps from the chest, and then see how your strict press increases. I've done that before. My strict press goes up every block without training it directly. And then another guy who has an incredible strict press, Rob Ward, he's the under 90 world record at the moment. Same thing. None of them train strict press.
It is interesting, isn't it? See, when I was, I don't know if you probably didn't see, and I'm not going to be offended if not, but the Midlands qualifier for the women's strongest went on so long ago, and I had about 8 clients who were competing in that. Now, due to COVID, we weren't allowed any spectators or any coaches. You could only be a competitor. So I thought, well, I want to be there to support my girls. So solid, I'll just go and do the competition with them, so I can just do that. Now, I've never log pressed in my life. And apparently I'm not very good at it, but there was a 40-kilo log, and you had to do as many reps as you could in 60 seconds. And I just went up to the guy who was arranging it, and I'm like, no idea what I'm doing here. So a couple of tips would be really, really good. And one of the girls just literally told me, because I'm a bench presser, I'm a bench press champion. She just said, just bench press it up. And that's all I realistically did. It was a neutral grip, close grip bench press, and a 40-kilo bench press to me is nothing. So I mean, it's so awkward because obviously I'm deadlifting, cleaning, and then trying to do a close grip bench press. But it's interesting with what you say there by saying don't actually train something that you're weaker at, just train something else. I mean, do you find that a lot of guys do kind of arch their back into that arched powerlifting bench brace in order to get that log up and just push their head through at the final?
Yeah, the difficulty you've got is if you right. So there's leaning back, and then there's obviously getting the thoracic and chest up. So thoracic and chest up will enable you to still press through a stable base. But if you lean back and try and press through it, you're never going to be able to stabilize. So one of the biggest things, I've had a lot of stick recently for it, but it's slowly starting to catch on. I'm not saying this is because of me, but it's keeping your head back and chest up before you push your head through. So it's creating a stable base that you can press from. And people are messing up their lockout by trying to fling their head through as quickly as possible. I used to do it when I didn't know what I was doing, but it's a big mistake. But people that lean back, if you lean back and then you bend your knees, you're falling over. Yeah. Okay, so there's no way you're completing the lift. So what I find is that the limiting factor with a lot of strong men, which is quite common, is thoracic mobility. So the ability to be able to get your thoracic into that position where you're not leaning back is an issue for a lot of strongmen.
Why do you find that that's the biggest issue with some strongmen? Do you think it's literally just the sheer size of them, or do you think it's just a laziness in mobility?
The latter.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of people who come from powerlifting into strongman, and it's an internal rotation. All the muscles, the chest, the anterior delt. So you get some people like that, but mainly it is definitely laziness and mobility. I had a guy recently, I won't name them, they came down from Manchester, and he was like, look, I don't like the log because I'm not very good at it. And I just unraveled things. And it was to do with a lack of mobility. So loosened him up, and he basically came down for a stretching session. All of a sudden, his log was flying up. Yeah. He found that every time he pressed, he would like that, and then he wouldn't be able to lock out, and he couldn't push his head through because you don't have the ability. And I see it all the time. And unfortunately, in strongman, you just get to the point where people lean back and kind of have a little look at the referee, and they'll get a down signal. Take Olympic weightlifting. Some of these guys, if you look at Lasha Talakadze, the world record on the snatch, clean jerk total, he's as big as these guys, right? He's not smaller by like any means. He's probably the same size as these guys, but his mobility is the same. And I know we're talking about a freak of nature, one of a kind. Like, we're not going to see another one in our lifetime, maybe. I know that, but there are still other guys that big who have mobility. Yeah. Okay. I don't believe it's a case of their musculature is stopping them. And I can prove that if you give me 10 minutes, I can release somebody.
Oh, really? That's cool. I might send you one of my guys. Just to see if that'd help. No, I find the exact same thing. And it's not just strong men, you know, I do find that strong men and bigger, heavier set powerlifters use it as an excuse and just kind of go, well, I don't need mobility. And it's like, well, actually, yeah, you do. You really, really do, especially if you're going to be doing a sport like strongman, because it's quite a functional sport as well, wouldn't you say? There's a lot of things that we take from strongman and we can actually use it in everyday life.
Yeah, I've been using strongman as a modified form of training for 12 years now. I got the idea from my mentor, Charles Poliquin. And yeah, it's because it's not static, it's locomotive or dynamic. It's, you know, I don't use the word functional, but I get what you mean by functional. Like, you're going to use those same patterns in everyday function in life. So for sure, yeah, I think it's more and more popular these days. I think it's even traveled to commercial gyms. I wouldn't know because I don't go to them.
Yeah.
But you know, you'll see sleds and prowlers and logs and things pretty much everywhere now.
Yeah, it's great for fat loss. Absolutely fantastic for fat loss. Horrible on the quads, but you know, especially prowler pushes after a leg day. That's disgusting. But yeah, that's for another conversation. I can actually thingy about it. Right. So one of the biggest things that I wanted to discuss, because it's a big thing in female strong woman, not female strong man, strong woman. It's getting more and more prevalent, more and more popular. The England's for the strongest woman is coming up next week, which is really exciting. I have seen a big lack in posterior chain strength for women, and I do find it's the same across the world in strength sports. A lot of women suffer with posterior chain strength. Have you got any ideas or any hints and tips for all women out there on how they can improve their everyday life by increasing their posterior chain strength?
The key thing that I find people are missing is, and sometimes this is lack of availability or access to the right. For me, one of the first to training with them is what back extensions do they have access to? I think I have 6 different ones in my gym.
Wow.
And
Okay.
that's the key for posterior chain strength, because you need to change the strength curve. You need to change the stimulus. If you want more information on that, you know, just look up on YouTube Louis Simmons and all the stuff he talks about.
Yeah.
He talks about in great depth of it. Charles Poliquin, my mentor, spoke about it all the time. It's a case of change the strength curve every 5 days. If you're just, I see it all the time. You get people that, you know, from powerlifting, they just do SBD, squat, bench, deadlift. And so, okay, well, you know, it could work for you. There's a few freaks out there where it does. You know, they don't do any assistance work. But for me, if you want balanced strength gains and a balanced posture, then using things like back extensions, glute ham raise, reverse hypers, chucking them in and finding your weak link there for sure. I mean, besides, you know, taking someone for an assessment and identifying what might be tight, like the class, all of the posterior chain machines can help ameliorate that issue.
So are you a fan of the hip thrust, the barbell hip thrust then, for increasing your posterior? Right, come on, let's have a chat about that. Mainly because there is a lot of things that are going on the gram at the moment, like literally saying the barbell hip thrust and glute pumps and things like that are absolutely ridiculous for posterior chain. So what's your viewpoint?
Right. So the first viewpoint I have is I don't need to set that up, and it's quite awkward to set up because I have all the other machines.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
why would I set something like that up when I have all the other options?
Yep.
So I'm not saying it's inferior. I don't like the idea of people putting 200, 300 kilos on their hips when they can't even squat 40.
Yeah.
Is it great for the glutes and great for aesthetics? For sure. And if you don't have access to all these other machines, it gives you an option. One of the articles I like was written by Kim Goss on the hip thrust and arguments for and against it. Yep. And one of the most interesting ones was the effect on the fascia. So if you look at the soft tissue, so when there's a bar on your hip, the fascia can't glide backwards and forwards. So it can create issues at the knee because it can't glide backwards and forwards. But again, a lot of people who are using it on Instagram or social media, they're using it for aesthetic reasons, not performance reasons. So as long as they look good, they're not as bothered about function. For me, it's if my coaches heard you ask me that, they would be expecting me to go off on a rant. because they do it to wind me up sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's not something I'll ever use in my gym, because I don't, I have all the other machines. So why would I use something like that? So those are my reasons probably against it, but I do see why people might use it, but I've never programmed it myself.
So when you're saying that you're relating it to, or comparing it, sorry, to the other machines that you've got in the gym, are you talking about a glute driver? Are you talking about reverse hypers and GHDs and things like that?
All of those: incline back extension, flat back or glute ham raise, inverse curl. I have 2 different reverse hypers just for the different functions of them. So yeah, I've got access to lots of specialized kit.
And key things in being strongman, strongwoman, do you think, or would you agree, if I was to say posterior chain and core, are those the 2 fundamentals that you would have in strongman?
Yeah, for sure. Like your posterior chain can't be too strong.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're a personal trainer or a strength coach, and let's say you have an athlete in front of you and you're like, I don't know what to do, just make their posterior chain stronger and you will improve function. Because if you just look at the lower back, there's a radiation effect from the lower back. So if the lower back is stronger, everything else gets stronger. And you can see that with multiple people, like John Bros and the way he does his training with people. But yeah, trunk, I don't like the word core, because people tend to forget certain elements of the core. But I'll use the word trunk. Yeah, I mean, you need a strong trunk. You need to ensure, abdominals, lower back, which we've been talking about, but also the sides, your QLs and obliques. And I think that the sides are the ones that people tend to forget. It's a 4-sided object is what I kind of visualize when I'm trying to design a program and take somebody from wherever to performance increase.
Definitely. So the obliques, realistically, they're a very hard one to train. I mean, you just see the gym bros quite a lot. They're holding a big weight on one side and they're doing some side bends. Is there anything that you would actually say would be better or quite unique and optimal to train your obliques?
So the number one movement, in my opinion, obviously it's my opinion, I'm saying it, is the windmill.
Okay.
If you looked up Pavel Satsuline, he would do it with a kettlebell. I do it with a dumbbell. That hits your QL and obliques better than anything else. And the reason I like it is because it fits in with the way I look at certain exercises. So there's an eccentric component, an isometric, then you stand up with the concentric, another isometric at the top. And there's certain standards you can build to. But if you want to improve moving events like farmer's walk, yoke, medleys, you need to be able to transfer power from your hip to your shoulder and vice versa. So it's the cross section. Yeah. So the windmill does that because it hits the obliques and the QL. If in doubt, the QL is the length for a lot of things from the back, is the leading movement that I would use in my gym. Progressions, you can do kneeling ones. I tend to use blocks. So some people can't get the range. So we put mats down, and then every week we take a mat away so they can improve. Some people can get their whole palm on the floor. Some people, we go just to fingertips, some thumb. So I play around with range, but because it's got those 4 items, I can play around with tempo.
Oh, interesting. That's really cool. And what about cables in terms of like a windmill on a cable? I actually call them like kneeling wood choppers. So you are in a half kneeling stance and you're just using a cable and doing that kind of windmill action. Would you still use a cable in terms of strongman training, or would you not actually use that resistance?
I don't use that movement, but I do use cables with strongman training. I mean, the element of that movement that I do like is the anti-rotation element when your arm's away from you. I think that's something that can transfer to, general pop all the way through, things like Palloff presses, with the trunk being an anti-rotation, or you should train the trunk with an anti-rotation element. But yeah, I do use cable movements a lot with assistance work for strongman.
Yeah, fantastic. See, the assistance work, that's something that really interests me as well, because I see a lot of strong men in the gym. I go to a lot of different gyms around the country, and a lot of the strong men that I see, they are literally still just training the strongman movement. So they'll have a look at the events that they're training for, and they'll just go, okay, well, I'll just train that. and they don't look at the conditioning element. So even though they might be able to lift up a 300 kilo 18-inch axle deadlift, for example, they don't understand that it's for reps in 60 seconds. So they're only lifting it maybe 4 times and then kind of going, right, okay, that's why I'm going home. In terms of like your accessory movements, then, do you like to have a program set out? I mean, obviously, I know that everything's individual, but do you like to have a program that's set out for maybe a big movement on one day? So say it is the deadlift that you are training, but then you'll follow that up with a lot of accessories, or will you just have lots of different variations of a deadlift and then maybe a strongman exercise at the end with conditioning on completely different days, or would you set it up differently?
More often than not, it's you've got your one main movement and then all the assistants work afterwards. Now, depending on the strength level of the client, I would set it up on, again, if we go back to the way Louis Simmons does his work, he'll do 2 heavy days, which equals max effort days, and then he'll do 2 dynamic days if we've got a 4-day week, right? And I kind of set things up like that in Strongman, because, and I don't term it heavy or max, because I don't do it the way Louis does it. I call it neural. So I do 2 neural days. One's an upper body neural work, i.e. could be heavy push press, and then the other one would be the heavy lower. That's where I put the event work. I used to do it a different way, but it didn't work as well. And then, so let's say you've got deadlift in your competition, it would be your deadlift, and then you've got farmers, it'd be farmers, and maybe a medley. You do medley. Usually, you know, a deadlift plus 2 events, and that's all you're going to want. Then we kind of rotate things as we go through. So sometimes the next week, instead of a deadlift, it could be a good morning or a squat, and then maybe the other 2 events, for instance. There's so many ways to program, but programming is one of my passions. But then the assistance with regards to balance, structural balance, and back extensions would come on the other dynamic day. So you've got the 2 heavy days or neural days here, and then you've got the 2 speed days down here, speed upper, speed lower. So you do the speed lower specifically for the event that you've got. So if it's deadlift, you have speed deadlift, and then the rest of that is going to be assistance work, or hypertrophy based assistance work, back extensions, windmills, lower abs, whatever comes up with regards to their needs analysis.
Yeah, interesting. I like it. Right. Okay. So last little element that I want to talk about in Strongman, we've seemed to have covered quite a lot. It's really excellent. But one of the elements that I do want to cover is psychology of lifters. Do you look into a lot of the psychological elements of your lifters? And if so, what's one of the most prevalent things that you can see in Strongman? Do you think it is actually them being afraid of the weights that are coming out these days because they have got so much heavier, or is there anything else that you've come up across?
I don't get so many clients tell me they can't lift certain things.
That's good.
Because I just go, look, realistically, this is where we are. I don't see that so much, but realistically, this is where we are. And realistically, I go, look, it's your 1 RM. Let's aim to pull 1 or 2 reps on a day. So we set a realistic goal. And I wouldn't train them for reps if they're only going to be getting, between 1 and 5. Sure. But it's funny you ask about the mindset side of things, because I've been heavily involved in helping people with that, with regard to sport, but also other elements. But with regard to Strongman specifically, we see a whole host of shit. What's the most prevalent? I'd say, there's so many things. Let's just try and pick on one. So people beat themselves up too much.
Yeah, a lot.
And it leads to a whole negative cascade of thought patterns. And your thoughts are your things, and what you think is what you become, whatever kind of thought process you want to look at. Either way, negativity is only going to breed negativity. So one of the things I try and work on with people is ability to praise oneself. Okay, you see it a lot. I've seen, let's use me as an example, because I think it's better to talk about me than my clients, because it's confidentiality and all that. Yeah. I've won England before, and at the end of it, I was completely empty. Completely empty. All I was thinking about was all the mistakes I made. I didn't deserve it. I didn't do this. I wasn't even slightly happy. And I see this a lot with people. They set up a goal, they achieve it, they don't step back, reflect, and think, fuck me, that was cool.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of myself. I'm proud of myself for doing this. And I'm not saying it's an ego thing. I'm not saying you're being arrogant. Look how fucking great I am. Yeah. I'm saying, you know, an inward reflection on being proud of yourself. And I tell them, I'm like, you know, it comes up in consults with, because obviously I do train a lot of strength athletes, but I get a lot of general pop come to me to get lean. And, you know, it's one of the questions I ask is like, you know, I've literally very recently to a trialist said, in the end of the consult, because I knew where her problems lay. I said, tell me 3 things you like about yourself. And she burst into tears. And I'm like, look, you can try all the diets you want, but you're not going to get anywhere until you fix that core issue.
Yeah.
So I always say happiness first. You've got to be happy before you get lean. You should really be happy before you think you can win things and be strong, because it makes the process more fun.
Yeah.
And gratifying, but you end up with more success. You're able to think, you're able to be present, you're able to be conscious instead of just being on edge and making stress-based decisions. It's a lesson I've learned very much the hard way over my career.
I totally agree. And I always say it when I do my Instagram posts, and I always hashtag it saying hippie woo woo shit, because I always say you've got to find your happy for the day. And it might seem like a lot of hippie woo woo shit, but hippie woo woo shit works, people, you know, it really, really does. And you've got to be happy in yourself. And I always find as well that if you approach an event or you approach a bar with a positive, happy attitude and just kind of like dance over to the deadlift bar rather than getting so angry and so het up, that bar will move faster and more efficiently if you're in a happy, positive mood than it will do if you are in a sad and negative and kind of like dark day. So, yeah, it is. It's very interesting. I do love the psychology of lifters. I really, really do. Now, Tom, I understand that we are obviously coming up on time here because we have covered quite a lot realistically. But same question that I ask everybody who comes on to Don't Fear the Weight, just because I like to put you on the spot. And because you haven't listened to any episodes, this is a proper out of the blue question for you. Yes, that's right. Tom has not listened to any of the Don't Fear the Weight ones yet. I know, yeah, never mind. So the very last question is, if you could sit down and have dinner with 3 people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
Oh, wow. I've never tried to answer these kind of questions. Right. I'm quite boring. I have to pick a comedian because I love to laugh.
Awesome.
And my favorite comedian is Billy Connolly.
Amazing.
And I know he's got Parkinson's, so maybe Billy now might not be optimal, but Billy Connolly in his prime, I think I would be in hysterics.
Yeah.
Wow. I think my mum, because she's not with me, and you know, just being able to spend time with your mum again is important. That would mean the world to me. I need to watch the episode to see what other people have said. Who would be the third person? You know what? I'm gonna go with my mentor as well, because he's also not with us, Charles Poliquin.
Sure.
And it would be nice to go, you know, I've used all your methods, and since you've left the world, you know, I've achieved this with people, and you know, whether you believe he's looking down or whatever, it would be nice to go, look, this is what I've done, and I hope you're proud of all of your teachings and what I was able to produce.
Oh, what a lovely thing to end on. That is wonderful. It's one of those questions that always kind of stumps people, especially when they're not expecting it, because it is a different one that, you know, no one's ever asked before. So it's quite a nice one, really. Before we go, just let people know, are you available for coaching, online coaching and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to see all my prices and know a bit more about me, then the website is winningstrengthonline.com. There's loads of free content if you're interested in that. We have a platform for members as well, which we throw every single piece of content we can in there. So there's loads and loads of videos. There's programs that you can either do yourself, give to your clients. It's more of an educational platform at the moment. And obviously we've got the Press Like Hicks program, if you want to develop your overhead strength.
Wonderful. So I'll make sure that all of those links are copied at the bottom of the comments, guys. So as always, if you do enjoy the podcast, which I'm sure that you do, give us a like, a thumbs up, and a subscribe, and I can carry on getting more awesome guests on like Tom. I'll probably see if Hixie can come on as well and just obviously blow smoke up your ass a little bit more than I have done, at least. But yeah, Tom, thank you very much for giving me your time today. And guys, we will catch you on the next episode. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.